Good to go?
Good to go.
All right, welcome to the 0 people at Town Hall, but a few people we have online to our first select board meeting of 2025. It does say 2024 on our agenda. That's messing with my head a little bit. Monday, January 13th, 2025. All right, phew. I'm Sabrina Dunlap, and we have Ken Trom and Stephen Whitley and Thomas Lapoma, and Jeff Donahoe is on the phone. And I guess Stephen's gonna make a motion.
I will make a motion to allow Jeff to participate remotely.
Well, second.
Okay, so it's a roll call vote. Stephen,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
I'm a yes, and Thomas.
Yes.
Jeff, whether you like it or not, you're in. Okay, so first up, we have points of pride.
Sure. I'll just note the agenda originally said January 10th because I already had my calendar on February. So all the dates were kind of screwed up. So this is the hardest time of year when
Yeah.
we're kind of working in 2 different years
It's
at
true.
the same time.
Yeah,
So,
it's trippy.
so it is January 13th, 2025. I just wanted to know, we had a huge turnout at the New Year's first day hike. And there always is, even in bad weather, and just really there were a lot of events leading up to that through the holiday season throughout town, and a lot of people involved. I think they did 70 gingerbread houses at the recreation department, and Lisette, our human service coordinator, was really busy. People were very generous donating. I think we had 92 people that received gifts through that. And everybody just really came together, and you kind of see the best of everybody. The donations are amazing, and I think people were happy about that. And it all went very well. It's kind of nice to be a little bit back to normal, though.
Mhm. All right. Ken?
I had participated in the first day hike, and I wanted to thank, Paula for setting it up again, and for Cleve and Lucia for being the leaders in the hike.
Mhm.
And as we'll be getting into later, I just want to again thank the CIP committee for their work, as well as Neil for his work.
Yes, I agree. All right, anything else? Okay, so next we have administrative approval of the consent agenda.
I will move the consent agenda of, we've decided it's January 13, 2025.
I will second.
Okay, and it's a roll call vote. Stephen?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Yes, Thomas?
Yes.
And Jeff?
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay,
Oh, good.
next is approval of the public meeting minutes of December 16th, 2024.
So moved.
I will second.
Okay, Stephen?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Yes, Thomas?
Yes.
And Jeff?
Yes,
All right, thank you. We do not have any public appointments, so we'll move on to old business. First up is 2025 budget/CIP update.
Sure. So the CIP committee met since your last meeting and made a few updates, largely not to expenditures, just to appropriations. I'll just sort of note some of the things. And then some items I think you should, I just wanted to review. The good news is we received updated quote on the sludge removal, and it was at $1 million. The estimate now is $712,000. So that is included in there. So that was good. The other notes is the CIP had taken an original request to replace the fence at fields 3 and 4 and stretched it out over 5 years. But then when they looked at it, they realized it didn't change the appropriation one way or the others. And it's cheaper to do it in 1 year. So they moved that back. That's under recreation facilities. And as we had talked at your last meeting, the Pennacook Road Bridge was moved up to 2025, but that didn't change 2026. That didn't change the appropriation either. There were enough funds there. So I'll just note that the CIP committee thought there are a few items in the capital plan that really are operating issues. So as we move into next year, they want to look at that more closely. A couple of things I do want to note, though, for board discussion, the George Park bathrooms, we have an estimated cost of $250,000. That's the updated one from the architect. Currently in the plan is 120, and there's a balance of 50, approximately 52. So really, they're going to get done in 2025, there needs to be an additional 80,000 added to the plan. That's one issue. The other issue is there was money. So Fountain Square is in the 10-year plan to be redone. There's a TAP grant coming up, which is through New Hampshire DOT with a 20% match. Originally, the number that was put in, there were 3 separate projects or one project in 3 sections: Maple Street, Main Street, and Park Avenue at 20%. Since then, we've actually had some updated numbers, also, which unfortunately went up. And construction, if we were to get the grant, would happen in 2030. CIP removed Main Street and Park Avenue. But in looking at the grant, if we were to do Maple Street and Park Avenue, that gets us right into that just over $1 million, which is where they're looking to be for the grant. So I think that's there. And basically that would require in 2030, 125,000 for the 20% match for Maple Street and 92,000 for Park Avenue. It would be an additional 190,000 to add Park Avenue into that. So Main Street and Maple are the 125 and 92. So that grant needs to be submitted this month, even though money wouldn't be expended. So I just want the board to be clear about, ideally we would apply for Maple and Main, but the CIP currently in the program is only Maple. And I think everybody's in agreement. Maple is the highest priority. This would be from Fountain Square to Maple Street School. Did that all make sense? So those are the 2 things: George Park bathrooms and TAP grant. TAP grant expenditures aren't until further out, so that wouldn't change anything in 2025, but George Park would.
Neil, for the
Maybe related to that, I did do the 10-year sort of lookout and sort of put in to try, as CIP went to level things. That's I plugged that all in, and you have that on the big sheet, which is the 10-year. In the original one, the percentage increase of the assessed valuation was too high. I should put in the missed a 0 actually, and which when it's after the decimal point makes a difference. So the one you have in front of you is updated to be more realistic. Couldn't figure out why the numbers didn't seem to match.
Neil, the forecast for 2025 does not include additional money for the restaurants.
It does not, because that would be your, this is based on what's in the, what you approved at the last meeting. So that would have to be added. And what I did too with fund balance, looking at that, is with the CIP committee changes, it actually dropped it down. So we could actually have in the budget, an increase would be at just over 2.5. But then I added fund balance other years, but trying to wean us off fund balance going towards the operation and hoping that we could move to using that more for these capital
Yeah.
expenditures that we know are coming down the road. So that's the way this sort of shows. I know once you get there, adjustments are certainly made every year.
Neil, are those 20% match numbers based on,
There,
are
those,
those, are those current numbers or those forecast 2030?
those are forecast 2030.
Thank you.
With the restrooms, are they just restrooms or are they more than that?
This is kind of the basic plan, and if really, I think they want more beyond that, that would have to be done, funded separately is kind of where we're at.
So just so I'm clear, it was 200,000 appropriated in here and then it's now dropped to 120, or it was originally 120, but now the estimates.
So 120's left over from last year that we didn't expend. And yes, there was originally in the request, we had added
The 200.
the money, not the additional 200, but the additional 120 we'd added to get it up to have the 250. I think it was an additional 80.
So is there a reason why they left 120 in here then? Because if that's not going to,
I think their sense was that should do it. Our sense is it won't do it.
okay.
And this 250 it was updated last week.
So if we want, if I'm understanding this, if we want the bathroom work to proceed in 2025, we have to fill that hole from someplace.
That's correct.
Okay.
Add that 80,000 in to have enough to do the basic plan.
Okay.
That's why I wanted to make sure you were all aware of that.
Mhm.
And our options for using it seems like it's fund balance or taxation.
Yeah, I think fund balance would work.
Yeah.
Looking at
Yeah.
where we're at, I think that would be the logical, the best place.
Can we not just increase the allocation in the CIP line?
Right, but you have to pay for it from somewhere.
No, right, but
So to increase that would either be fund balance or taxation.
yeah, but those are fundamentally the same things. Like the money comes from taxation regardless.
Right, but fund balance this year wouldn't be an additional tax impact rather than being new money.
Yes, but then it's just less money that is in the bank that, I mean, like eventually, I mean, we're not hoarding cash here. Eventually, the money comes out of taxation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
But fortunately, the fund balance that we're gonna have available for use is quite a bit higher than what we were, originally planning to use.
Potentially. Have
Well,
not finalized,
The,
but we're getting closer. I think we've got the 80,000 that would be needed.
so if we added 80,000 to the restroom for restrooms and 80,000 more fund balance use, and then we're at about a 2.5% overall increase.
Yes. Let me pull that up.
When does this need to be finalized?
So right about now, because the budget committee will meet this week, so it would have to go to them.
Because they need one public hearing before
Their public hearing is the second Tuesday in February.
February, but
That's
they need-
already set, and then it's really,
no, but do they need one meeting before that? Or is that the only one?
so,
We've had meetings,
They have,
I'm talking about in terms of finalizing the numbers,
so they'll meet this Wednesday,
right?
and my guess is they'll meet next Wednesday, but that may be it.
But that's what I'm asking, do they need to have a meeting before the final public meeting to finalize these? Or do the final numbers only have to be done before the February meeting?
So they are meeting before they have to finalize their numbers prior to,
Right, so they need to have one meeting before their February meeting, their final meeting.
yeah, they'll probably have two. They're meeting this week and they'll probably.
Wait, in
meet
terms
next
of the
weekend.
requirement to finalize these numbers, they have to have two meetings.
No,
So they only need the one last public hearing.
right. They're only required to have the public
So
hearing.
these numbers could be changed up into that last meeting, in theory. Like what I'm asking is, what is the requirement for these numbers to be finalized?
Should be before that. It's almost impossible for us to change everything. So before public hearing,
Right, but the budget committee only needs to have that one hearing.
correct.
Okay, so any numbers can be changed up until that last hearing. They shouldn't,
Technically,
they should have more
yes.
meetings, we should have more meetings.
Yes,
But that's the requirement.
yes. They will vote after that public hearing that night on
Yes.
their final numbers, and that's
Okay,
it. Although, yeah. Other, this would actually be a warrant article, so they're just voting whether to approve it.
to
but
approve it or not.
Then they would have to meet again if it got changed after that. You changed.
Because it's not the actual budget. Right.
Right.
Okay.
And so if we're adding, what is it? $80,000 from fund balance? Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah, that would up the CIP amount by 80 and up the fund balance to offset it by 80.
Yeah, which article is that? Is that,
So the
is that in the warrant already?
it is the amount is it, but it would be added to article. It's the capital reserve one.
Okay. Because the way it's set up is that the
Article
entirety of this comes from taxation.
Yeah, and then so it probably wouldn't change this. It would just be you do it in your planning, you up it, and so it's not directed specifically from fund balance.
But we want to increase what we're raising and appropriating though, right?
Well, I think that's what he's saying is that right now it's appropriating 120. And so we would just bring the extra 80 out of fund balance and that way everything just stays the same. I mean, if I would rather just increase the appropriation to the correct amount and then use the fund balance to offset tax increases. Cause I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that's what we're all talking about.
yeah, that's what I was,
that's what I thought you were suggesting,
Yeah.
but it sounds like what Neil's talking about is not that.
No, that is,
So we would change this item to 200.
well, it's not, it'd be on the warrant. The money amount has to be consistent with what's in the capital improvement plan.
Right.
And that's what I was asking Neil about. Where is this in the warrant? To figure out what to change on the warrant.
Yeah, it'd be Article 8.
That's what I
Go up by
thought too,
80,000.
yeah. But Article 8, as it's written, is entirely from taxation.
Right, so Article 8 would go up by 80,000 and then the tax impact from the budget would go down by the equivalent of 80,000. Because we'd be using the fund balance to offset tax impact.
And I guess what I'm saying, which I think will maybe get to what you're saying, Thomas, is that we probably need to add language saying that some portion of the total sum in Article 8 is going to come from fund balance. So, because otherwise it's going to hit the tax rate.
That's what I'm saying, it shouldn't.
or you could just up here on this sheet, well, this still lists this lists 270. You would just make that 350.
Okay, so you're Neil saying that we would use fund balance toward the end of the year
To
when we go to pay for it.
right,
Okay,
which is generally how we've done it versus
okay.
tying it in. Keeps it simple.
Well, I mean,
But don't we have to, even if we do it that way, we have to be mindful of the bottom line amount of money that we're expending? Because we can't exceed that.
Right, so it would have been appropriated. It would just be offset by fund balance,
Okay,
right?
okay. And I think maybe that's what Tom was
And-
getting at.
And that's the 2024 fund balance, so expenditures in 2025.
Okay,
well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say is that like this method is an easier way to present the final impact number, but it's a more complicated way of actually appropriating the funds. And like, so I'm more in favor of like, if we're saying we want to spend the money on the thing we want to spend the money on, we should just have it in the line item of the thing we want to spend the money on. And then use that fund balance to decrease tax rate. But it makes it more complicated as a presentation because you have to explain that, which
a lot of steps in that.
I don't think it's gonna make it any more complicated to explain. I mean, you just jump to the bottom line.
right, when you combine everything, the number is the same.
Yeah, that's why this
Which-
sheet that Neil has up is so critical. for
Right,
the
like that-
explanation.
That final tax impact number is the same.
But so Neil, the CIP committee, it's not like they were considering the 80 grand in another year. They just said, do the bathrooms with 120,
Yeah,
even though we know that can't be done.
yeah, and Dan was there and said, that's not gonna do it.
So that doesn't seem like a super helpful.
They didn't spend a lot of time on it,
Okay.
but that was,
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to know. I just wasn't clear if they were thinking like maybe push it off, but which I would not be in favor of. But,
I think we had sort of promised it last year at town meeting.
no, I'm
So
definitely
we
not
have
saying to
to
put it
do
off.
it.
I'm just
and it
questioning
was in there, yeah.
what the CIP was suggesting, because it sounds at odds with reality. So just clarifying that. Okay, so are we good with this?
So update the CIP plan to add an additional 80,000 appropriation in 2025. We're going to up the expenditure to the 250 for the bathrooms, and we'll adjust this sheet to add an additional 80,000 coming from fund balance.
Okay.
And warrant article 8 will go up 80,000.
Okay.
Just to confirm though, 200, not 250, 200? You said,
I think the cost is 250, but there's enough in that fund.
got it,
to be
okay,
able to
got it,
Do the 250.
okay.
So that actually, the use of fund balance at 350 is actually lower than where we were at our last meeting.
It's 10,000 below.
Yeah.
Where we thought it might be.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the sidewalks. Which, the only thing you really have to decide is if the application that should be put in, if we should only put in Maple Street or if we should put in Maple and Main.
And there's no obligation by us putting an application,
There's not.
but it's just how do we want to fund that 20% match when it comes due?
Right, or if you have no desire to fund it, then we wouldn't apply for it, because I think if we. It's not necessarily good to apply
Yeah,
for it and
they're not gonna
not
use it.
take it.
Do we have anything in the CIP that we're putting money away for that match as of yet?
Yes, so there is the Maple Street portion is covered in 20. Twenty 2027,
Where are you looking? Yeah.
under road and bridge CRF,
Okay, 1 second.
it's on page.
Oh, there it is. Okay. sidewalk, oh, there it is, the 20% matches, thank you.
The other two were zeroed out. That's,
So in 2027. Okay, it'll be part of the $400,000 appropriation. Wow,
How developed are the plans for those?
they are a general on-call, regional planning engineer plan,
Okay.
which is all that's
Yeah, right.
needed for the grant, but it is an engineer plan.
Okay.
so have these CIP numbers been changed at all to reflect the increase to do both parts of that 10-year?
So the CIP committee took out the other two sections, so they are not in here currently.
Okay,
So if you were going to add them, they'd have to be added. But also construction now looks like it will be in 2030, so there's some extra years in there too.
so if we decide to go forward with an application, we can have the CIP committee revisit how to gradually get us there.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
And what are the chances all three would get accepted?
The amount they're saying they're going to be in, the two seems to be a better. And it seems like Park Avenue is not in nearly, it's the most expensive because it's the longest, but it's also in much better condition anyways.
So is it worth applying to all three and hoping we get one?
It's one grant and they're looking for in the like $1.2 million range. So the two, it will be two together get us right there. I think it's too big. It would be too big if we do all three.
So it will be Maple and Main
Maple
in
and
the
Main.
application, and we'll forego
Forego
Park for the time being.
For now.
Yeah, okay, okay. I mean, I think we should make an application and task the CIP with
Mhm.
figuring out how to put money away so that when we get there, we have the 20%.
And yeah, as you're saying, when we get there is not until 2030, if you always.
Right. We got some time to build up that 20% match.
Okay,
And we're not obligated to do anything.
Yeah.
Even if we put in the application.
That's right.
okay. Does anyone disagree with that? All right. Thank you, Neil.
That was all
We need a vote for the
budget
application.
updates. I think that can just get submitted. I don't think it needs a vote.
Neil, I had asked you about, seemed to be a $10,000 discrepancy. Were you able to, had you had a chance to try to, okay.
No. Somewhere in here. Between the cut and the total, I'm pretty sure the total is correct. I just have to find out what changed from
I'm
before.
guessing it might be the formula for the radios. It might have been a plus as opposed to a minus or vice versa. Because,
Dave plugged those in. That could very well be it.
Mhm. Well,
I'll go check it.
I don't know.
I think that's it for that.
So in terms of the, because the budget committee is quite interested in what the impact of bonds would be on future years for the tax increase. Neil put this great schedule together that, around 5% a year for the next 4 years, 5 years, then declining. But I'm just wondering about amount of fund balance to use in 26, 7, and 8. If we could actually just plug in higher numbers, because the way I look at it, I think we've already got enough excess to cover 550,000 that you're using for those 3 years. The way I
Can we relook at this after we close the year? Then we have a firm, then we kind of know where we are.
Sure, I can just explain that these are initial figures to the budget committee.
So what are you proposing, Ken? I'm sorry.
We're here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Using more fund balance than what's stated here.
2 and 150. Potentially that there'd be more available, so they're, well, and these are just
Oh, I see.
projections for future years. I mean, 5% is where it stands, 5.09, say for 2026 using 200,000, but if you 250, say it might be, 4 points.
Oh, I see. I see what you mean.
And,
Okay.
and that's just projections for future.
Okay. Right. To bring those down a little bit for those couple of years. Okay. Yep.
The warrant, I think, is there. The only thing, we do have an SB2 petition, and the hearing for that needs to be between February 18th and March 5th. So, and you're not actually meeting between those two dates. So my suggestion is the March 10th board meeting be moved to March 3rd. And we have the hearing then. And then you're not meeting the night before the election. So you're meeting February 10th. And then it would be March 3rd. So that's just 1 week sooner, but there's still a few weeks in between.
Yeah.
I will not be here on the 3rd. But
I can do the 3rd.
Yeah, I can.
That or have the 3rd and have just the hearing.
Right.
If you don't
But then we'd have
want
to
to have
come
the
back on the 10th.
on the 10th. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
so between February 18th and March, okay. So we are meeting January 27th and
yes,
then February
10th.
10th.
It has to be within 2 weeks.
It has to be, it's between 15 and 30 days before the vote. The vote's on March 20th. So it has to be between
Yeah.
February 18th and March 5th.
So wait, okay, just looking at the calendar, March. Currently, our meetings. March is insane. Okay, so we've got. Ballot voting day,
The 11th.
and then our meeting's on the 20th. Our town meeting, I mean, so when are we meeting?
You're scheduled to meet currently the 10th and the 24th.
Okay.
And you said the 24th does not work for SB2.
Well, this is March.
Which are the same this February, which makes it,
February 24th.
that's
we've moved-
vacation week.
Yeah, because it's public. school
everyone's
season.
gone.
We moved that meeting. I was just thinking about if we could, so the 27th, so the 10th would be 2 weeks. If there, and the only other thing would be if we don't do the 3rd and instead did the day after President's Day weekend, like Tuesday, the 18th, that would be a meeting on February 10th. And then the public hearing on the 18th. And then in March, we would just meet on the 10th and 24th instead of March 3rd. But if you guys, I mean,
I
I
can
don't know
do
what
either one.
people prefer. So Neil, were you proposing March Monday, March 3rd, and then we would not have our regularly scheduled meeting on March 10th.
On the tenth, yeah, thinking that was the night before election.
Hmm,
I think you really want to be here.
yeah, I know. Unfortunately, I'm out. I'm like.
That's also our
traveling
last-
That date.
That's our last meeting before the meeting, right?
Yes,
So maybe
so
we'll
maybe the 18th to the
Could we
18th
do-
is the public
do the
hearing.
public hearing on Tuesday,
March 18th or
February 18th,
February 18th?
because it has to be between February 18th and March 5th for SB2. So we would have a regular meeting on February 10th, and then the hearing on the 18th, and then regular meeting on March 10th, which is our last meeting before Election Day and town meeting.
That works.
Okay,
And that will be just the SB2 hearing that night.
yeah, just SB2 on Tuesday, February 18th.
Do you know if there are any other petition warrant articles, or is it too late now?
It is not too late, February 4th. I think this is probably the only one that would require a public hearing, so.
I mean, the other,
Other than the
so
bond.
the other option,
If somebody
the bonds.
petitioned bonds, that's true.
if we were to do Tuesday, March 4th, we're getting pretty close. I mean, I guess I'd feel a little bit better about doing it on the early end of that window versus like the day before the deadline in case we have a, I don't know,
Storm.
No
natural
storm.
disaster or something. Okay. All right, so we'll do the February 18th for the SB2 public hearing.
Because I get a question every year at the presentation of what the tax impact of the increase in the operating budget is, would we be able to add a line to the warrant?
No,
I think
don't
I
believe-
ask that every year.
I don't believe so. You can only put in the warrant what. Although I could check on that.
What do you want to add?
If you look at Article 7,
Yeah,
the bottom line estimated tax impact, $4, whatever. People regularly ask, well, what's the impact of the increase in the operating budget?
over last year.
And
We can
because-
provide that on a separate sheet. Because I think I also think you're going to confuse people if you put two tax impacts under one article.
Under Article 10, the $45,000, is that assuming it's closing out pay by bag?
That's not, it's in yellow because it's not finalized yet. That does not. No, Article 12 would close out pay by bag.
So what's the basis of the 45,000? Is that?
It will be basically
That's from this.
close to what's in the fund,
As of now.
right? But if you do it all in Article 12, it all goes to fund balance. It doesn't go to the transfer station, and I don't think that's really the intent of it.
So what we have currently in the what I call the bingo sheet for pay by bag special revenue for 2025 proposed is 0.
Right, it's a wash, so it doesn't really matter. That's why it's highlighted, because I'll get the exact amount and fill that in on everything.
Okay.
But whatever the revenue and they offset each other.
Okay.
Article 13 is the newer one, and actually this doesn't have to be finalized. I think your February 10th meeting, but
That's when we'll vote on these.
Yep, so probably next meeting, you'll spend a little more time and assign them and
Did we ever circle back to how this Bates Building article, how that intersects with guidance from the charitable trust? Basically, can we have a below market rent and still make sure we're on the right side of the charitable trust unit?
Well, wasn't the charitable trust issue only gonna come into play if we tried to sell the building?
I think that's right, but I just can't recall if we thought about it specific to this proposed article.
This is just for a lease.
I think you're probably right, but I wanted to make sure we
Mm-hmm.
thought about that before we went forward
Yeah,
with
I'm
this.
trying to remember.
Was there something about if it was longer or less than a year?
If it's longer than a year, think we need the meeting to ratify it,
Yeah,
the town meeting that is.
Right.
Even in the case if 13 passed?
Yeah, because I don't see this asking for authority to go beyond a year.
does say for a period determined by the select board, but it probably has to say for a period up to 5 years
Yeah,
or
I
something.
think that we might want to add that language
to do a longer term lease, yeah.
in addition to thinking about.
So, yeah, the charitable trust discussion we had, it was you and me, wasn't it? And Jim, maybe? Is it that long ago?
It was pre-pandemic.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, and it was
April.
because that was the year we were hoping to sell the Bates Building.
Right.
And we could not do that because of the vote, but we had the conversation about.
So what to do with the money we got?
And it was like,
Wasn't half going to the library and half for general fund?
That was our.
right, and it
proposal, I
was,
think.
and they felt that that stayed within sort of the spirit of the whatever. It's not a deed restriction, whatever is attached to the Bates Building and the donation to the town.
Trust restriction.
Something like that, yeah, must be. I can find those notes.
I think it probably is fine, but I just,
This is advisory anyways, right?
yeah,
So
Yeah, I'm fairly certain we only need to involve the charitable trust folks if it involves a sale.
I think that's probably right.
I will
but
try to
just
find
worth-
those notes.
Of course, they're probably all new people at the.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, 2 or 3 over, actually, I think. But yeah, this is advisory, but we got to this point because we keep struggling with.
no, right, like what we should be doing
What we
during
should
these
be doing for
negotiations.
rent, yeah.
Aren't we gonna revisit the sale potential?
Yeah, and I think that's still in the,
Okay,
they're still looking at that, but I think last time you asked for this one,
Mhm.
so, okay,
Yeah, I guess if we hear very promising news from them about purchase, we can add another article,
could add.
you know?
okay.
I was thinking we need more articles.
Yeah, that'll be good, yeah. One more Bates Building
Yeah,
article,
why not?
because one's never enough.
Nope.
Yeah,
What would happen if this was defeated?
it's
Well-
advisory.
So to me, if this was defeated, we'd probably have to rethink the way that we're leasing out that building.
Well, yeah, wasn't this Jeff's idea? Because some of us were okay with the arrangement we have with the nonprofit that is currently occupying that building, and I think Jeff wanted to put it to the voters, so this is his. He
I
gets to
thought,
present
yeah, I thought
this.
this was like a middle ground
Yeah.
to sort of get the position of the voters.
Right,
This might have been me.
I,
I mean, if Jeff wants to take credit for it, that's great. But I don't want to throw Jeff under the bus.
All right, it's Thomas's.
I'm happy to take it.
No, this was a conversation yet. That's why we're digging deep. It was a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah, this goes back like years.
Yeah.
To me, the main point of this was like during those negotiations, during lease negotiations, especially with someone like the current tenant who is providing public good.
Mhm.
They're not like, there's one, we weren't really finding anyone else that would
Right.
want to lease it, but then also during those negotiations, it's like, what's the purpose of this building?
Right.
I think
Yeah.
there's also a lot of questions around, like, we also have, or had, or still have the Horseshoe Tavern, which is a similar position where it's like, we can't really rent it, we can't sell it, we can't really do anything. What is the purpose of this? And more of just a confirmation that the purpose of this is ideally for someone like, who's in there now.
Mhm.
Way. Yeah, this is gonna be a long. 4 articles that have to have voting open for an hour.
yeah, that's gonna be
And I will need a lot of ballot boxes,
yeah.
Wait, is that for each of
3
the
bonds and then the SB2
SB2?
All require an hour each.
Mm-hmm.
ballot vote. Cool.
Christina's already reached out to Sarah because we've had some to have conversation on logistically how to do
Mm.
that.
That'll be fun.
Well, discussion on 12 and 13 will take at least that long. So we'll have plenty of time to count.
Green bags in the Bates building. Keep coming around. Okay. Any other discussion about the warrants? So we'll finalize this on February 10th.
Yep, and you can discuss it more at the next, you have 2 meetings before it has to be finalized.
February 10th, okay.
The preliminary financial information is just a update, and we'll, as by your next meeting, we should have it pretty much closed and done, and we can do the final amounts. Nothing really popped out. Those?
To me, on the financials is, it looks like it's giving us more fund balance than we were anticipating. But in both cases, at this point, on both revenue and expenses, looks like we're within 5% of the budgeted numbers. Which is, I think, is very good.
Do you want to jump to sewer rates?
Yeah, and if you're good, Ken.
Yes.
So new sewer rates wouldn't take effect until the next billing period. I checked on that. We couldn't adopt them now and have them. Used to be able to do 2 things at once. I can't seem to. So you've got a little bit of time, which is probably good, but I just thought I'd give kind of an update on sort of where we're at. So this is our current, what we bring in, the fixed fee. This is for a year. We have 222 users. We charge a lesser amount for under 9,000 gallons. $9,000. I'll get Beverly. Beverly did this. She did a lot of work on this, which was very helpful. Or over 9,000 gallons is more. So that's our current amount. Basically, this shows us our revenues are the blue as they are now, and our operating expenses are the line. So we're not at the moment meeting our operating expenses.
Are we even at 50% of our operating expense?
About.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close to that. So, and then we have capital costs that wasn't including capital costs, but we have substantial capital costs coming down the road, which we'll have to look at a little more. Probably some policy questions that need to be determined by the board. Basically, I think I've been under the assumption at least 100% of the operational costs need to be covered. And then how much capital costs. We're looking at, probably need to have a longer discussion at some point about the expansion and how we do that. We certainly need to upgrade our current system before we can expand it. I would have to say, I think Dave's on, so I'm not saying this just because he's on, but he has really sort of opened our eyes. I think both Dan and I feel like we know more about this system, whether we wanted to or not. Now, I think maybe in the past, a lot's been glossed over, which is concerning to us, and both of us would rather have the clear, full picture. So if you look at, if you did a 20% increase in rates each year by fiscal 28, it gets you covering the operating costs. This is still operation costs. If you did a 50% increase in year one and then 20% after that, it gets you up there to start to cover capital costs. This shows if you did 50% and then 20%, this is how much basically sort of a sample family would increase over those years. The water precinct, the Kentucky Village Water Precinct is currently doing this same type of study. And we are also in our asset management grant. So we're still gathering more information. And this is I guess this totally 50% year over year gets us up to covering pretty much everything, which may not be realistic, at least in that time frame. So that's largely.
Can we go back for a second, Neil, to the sort of the breakdown of the users?
Sure. That one.
So
So
there's at what point, so the fixed fee applies to you if you use less than 9,000, like how do you differentiate between?
Everybody gets the fixed fee.
Oh, okay, and then on top of that, there may be an additional charge?
And then
Got it. Okay.
usage based on your water usage is done. We also have a number, like maybe as many as 100 meters that are an issue that the Kentucky Village Precinct is working really hard to fix, which certainly could help this. I think in my recommendations, depending on sort of where you want to go, I think the fixed fee makes sense. And then one straight fee per gallon, partly because we bill at different times. So if we don't bill, and it's the precinct's numbers that we use, if we don't bill for 9 months, then more people are paying over the 9,000 gallons. It doesn't raise a lot of extra money. It doesn't, especially on the sewer side, doesn't encourage conservation at all. The studies from DES all say if your rates go up based on usage, you might see a year at the most of conservation and then everything goes right back. So it really doesn't, it's not a good way to do that. There are better ways to,
But
encourage conservation.
the current 340 though is well under any sort of normal price, right? Like,
So what we have found is, and we'll put more of that together, statewide rates are all over the place. But you will find that the cities who have actually upgraded their systems and are doing what they are supposed to be are substantially higher. And most towns are like us. They've sort of been getting along with bubble gum and duct tape, basically.
Yeah.
And are in the same place. So I don't want to say people have had a really good deal for a long time, but
Do
So
we know these 222 users? I mean, I'm assuming they're primarily residential, primarily single family. It'd be
yes,
interesting to know of the 222, like how that's broken down by
we should be able to figure that out.
because I'm just looking at, the hybrid approach versus the steady 20% increase, makes a big difference if we're talking about a 50% bump for a single family versus some other type of user,
Right.
obviously.
So it's largely Kentucky Village and that area. It does not go out Amesbury. It does go down Kearsarge, and I think onto Spring. But
Yeah.
sorry, fixed rate is 340 currently. So a single family home pays 340.
yes,
then-
170 with each billing, and we bill twice a year.
So then in the sample sewer bill, 50 to 20% increase. It says current 690,
That also goes up the same 50%.
but that's just like that 690 is not like the actual rate. So like in 2029, that number of 26,830, or sorry, 2683, that's not what a residence or a single family home would be paying in 2029, right?
Looking at slide 8. Yeah.
Right, so like that number there, it says current is 690. So like if you were to use this chart to look at what a person would be paying in 2029, it makes it look like they're paying 2,600.
They would be.
But are they really starting at?
But they're not starting at
690?
690.
That's not yeah.
This
Person is, but that's what I'm saying is that
this is just one particular person.
but this isn't, but a single family residence is they're a fixed rate, right? So this is just
Everybody that's billed is a fixed rate plus their usage.
Got it.
So evidently
Okay.
here
Okay.
they have 340 plus 350
Let's see. Okay.
in usage fees.
Okay.
Is that common to have that much user fee for, I'm just curious if that example is like a typical single family or like a higher volume user.
No, I think this is pretty typical.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she aimed at a typical. When we did it before, I actually picked people I knew
Yeah.
so that I could say this is a 4-family household.
Right,
This is
right.
a single household to do that comparison. We can do that. So I give you that largely because I think probably we should get through,
I think we need to make some changes.
but it's good.
It's been there for years.
Mean at this time, though, Ken.
Yeah, we went up a couple of years ago. And the other part of the whole thing is the pump house, and you received a memo on that, the pump station. That we have some leakage and some work that needs to be there. There's going to need to be excavation. We're in the process right now of getting prices, which we should have by your next meeting, to come in. There is some money in capital reserve, but that's this. I think Dave's recommendation makes sense. Replace the force main pipe. Just a reminder that all the septage flows by gravity down to Riverside Park. And then it is pumped up all the way up to the treatment facility by the highway department. And then the what gets released, the water that gets released comes back down and goes into the river also there. So everything goes through this pump station, which is right there. So
And these numbers don't include anything about the warrant for like the sludge removal, right?
as they go, the one slide with capital did include all that.
The capital expenses for the 50% year over year.
Yeah.
It's operational costs. So that would include paying back for the,
So if it was, I think it's 50% a year. In 5 years, you would get to cover in capital, but that's pretty substantial.
yeah.
So I think town council's going to be on right now
Oh, they're coming
I
up
don't-
via Zoom.
via Zoom.
Oh, I thought they were coming in person. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we need to break for our non-public.
Are we done with this?
Well, do we need to make a decision tonight on this?
I don't think there's any decision to make. It was really just
This was very helpful. to see.
update, and you'll have probably a lot more on the pump station
Yeah,
at your next meeting.
so more sewage in our.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Dave, I appreciate Dave bringing this, although I think he
Yeah.
feels like every time he walks in, it's not good news, but it is what it
That's
is.
to uncover these things.
It
but
is, it's
not.
better to do it and get it fixed. So,
Okay, so I think we need to vote to go into non-public, and then are we changing rooms?
you probably can just recess and then start, because I think this would be a non-meeting,
It's a non-meeting,
because you're meeting
With
with
legal
council.
okay. So do we need to vote to go into recess? Can I just declare? That we're going into recess?
I don't think
Okay.
we're gonna have any
We're
opposite.
going into recess. Okay, we will be back. I don't know when, but soon to finish the rest of the meeting.
We're back.
Is Jeff still on, by the way?
Jeff is not.
Can I,
We don't have to do roll call vote anymore?
No.
Okay.
the Bates building with Jeff's idea. Noted. On this, just another question on the sewer. How many of the sewer users are in the Kentucky precinct?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah.
Okay, and
Because they all have water. There are people in the precinct, everyone in the precinct, or just about everyone has water.
yeah,
And
right.
most of them have sewer, but some of them don't have sewer, but all the sewer customers are in the precinct.
So is there a reason why the sewer bonds aren't happening as a Kentucky bond article and not like a precinct, a Kentucky precinct bond article?
So Kentucky Village Precinct owns the water system, the town owns the wastewater system.
Right, but they still are the ones paying for it. So is,
No,
No,
the town owns it. That would be like us doing a bond for the school.
well, that one's weird because it's both the town.
But they're all,
But the groups of people. are the
they're
same.
separate entities.
But the groups of people are the same, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So like, okay,
partially only some of the water customers or sewer customers. For instance, I'm a water customer, not a sewer customer.
no, right, but so like for the Hopkinton Village precinct, not all of the users of the water system are in the precinct, and not all of the precinct is on the water system. But improvements to the water system are paid for with bonds that are covered by the precinct and then paid back through usage fees. So the precinct guarantees the bonds, raises the bonds, pays for the improvements, and then it doesn't have any tax impact because it's all paid for by usage fees,
Yeah.
which is fine because it's all from the water. So in terms of how that could happen that could happen the same way with the Kentucky precinct, where they would raise the bond and appropriate the bond and pay for the improvements, and it would all be paid for through usage fees. And it wouldn't have anything to do with the town. Other than the fact that the town would actually have to manage the improvements.
But that would be true of their water system, but they don't own the sewer system. So they're two separate entities.
Right, but the people who are using and paying for it are the same.
Yes.
Yes, right. So I get that part. It's- Okay. And the water system is actually more complicated because most of the water system isn't actually on the precinct land. Because most of the water system is way up Boundary Road, right?
Right.
The reservoir and
The
They own-
reservoir, the tank.
They own the
station.
land, though,
Right.
even if it isn't in the
Right,
precinct.
Right.
I don't know why when sewer was done, it was done. I assume because it was a whole town. The pipes were running into the Kentucky River, so it
Yep.
was probably the town requirement, which is why it was done the way it was done.
thanks.
Back from our recess. Next is community power committee elimination.
Sure. As you remember, when the select board reestablished the energy committee in 2022, one of the anticipated areas of work was to investigate community power. And following initial investigation by the town and consistent with state law, the committee recommended and this board approved in 2023 a separate community power aggregation committee in order to develop and implement a community power plan for Hopkinton. That plan was approved at last year's town meeting and since has been successfully implemented. Now the Community Power Committee, in conjunction with the Energy Committee, is unanimously recommending that this board dissolve the Community Power Committee and return oversight of community power to the Energy Committee. The only change being recommended to the Energy Committee charge is to add back in to the anticipated areas of work to now read oversight of community power and to update the select board as appropriate. I'll note that the structure of the committee still calls for a select board member to be on the committee. The committee feels that's always helpful, but that's a call for this board. And I'll just add that even once I leave the select board, I'd like to continue on the committee. So the request here is just to do away with the Community Power Committee and roll it back into the Energy Committee.
I think the wording also needs to say that they are the Electric Aggregation Committee, because I think that's statutory.
Do we need a motion?
I'm thinking we should update this and bring a draft new charge.
Yeah.
Maybe at the next meeting and do it. We'll add that language and add this language. How do you feel about a select board member required to be on it?
On the
It would be the Energy
Committee?
Committee.
First of all, I think it's a great idea. I think it makes tons of sense. I'm personally, I think it would make sense to have a select board member on the Energy Committee for that, mostly because there is so much that can happen through the community power agreement, and there are really unique, large ramifications that can happen from changes in there that I think it's worth having a select board member be intimately involved in the process. I fully trust that the Energy Committee can handle it. It's more to me about forcing one of us to be there and listen to all that conversation, so that when things do come, at least one of us has a really in-depth knowledge into it.
And like I said, the Energy Committee would like to see a select board member on it, continue on it.
We can update it, bring it back for final vote next meeting.
Okay.
Then I'd like to just give you some updates on community power. Through the first 4 months of its implementation, as long as it's been in existence for Hopkinton, we're estimating that Hopkinton electric users on the program have saved about $110,000. And they make up about 72% of the meters in town. The reason it isn't higher is some people are on competitive supply, net metering or solar customers. There's not yet the ability, because of PUC has to rule on it, to allow those into community power. And about 2% have opted to stay with utilities default power. So out of there's I believe 2,454 customers in town that are served by community power. As far as the new rates that are starting February 1, the coalition rate will be just slightly lower than Eversource's, but it'll be slightly higher than Unitil's. And Unitil has about, coalition serves about 79 Unitil customers in town. There's an issue now at the state level as the PUC is considering billing all customers for any under collections by the utilities default service instead of just the utilities default customers that are responsible for the under collection. So I'm wondering if the Energy Committee has or could have the flexibility to weigh in at the PUC or legislature on an issue like this on its own authority, or should they come back to the select board? And by weighing in, I mean something like a letter of opposition, not something that would cost the town any money to get involved in litigation. And I'm asking this simply because timing would potentially be an issue.
I think I would say come back to the select board.
I think that's fair.
And my reasoning is that, the committee is appointed by us, but the voters were elected by the voters. And so I think we should have a final sort of say before
Mhm.
someone's going to the PUC to make, take a public position.
I'm fine with that, and it was just something I felt, why not raise the issue, because where it just came up with the PUC, the coalition is intervening and objecting.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Okay. So that was advocacy by the Energy Committee.
Yeah.
So finally, under new business, we have a filing period for town offices.
Sure, just you've probably seen the notice, but filing period opens Wednesday, January 22nd through Friday, January 31st. There's 2 select board seats, town clerk tax collector, 2 budget committee member seats, a library trustee seat for 2 years, and then a library trustee position for 3 years, a 3-year cemetery trustee, and a 3-year trustee of trust funds. And an election is on March 11th. And those people get sworn in at the close of town meeting on Thursday, March 20th.
If we finish on Thursday. March 20th. I have a conflict.
meeting
on the
starts.
21st.
Okay. All right, town administrator updates.
Sure, I'll just, Thomas was at the meeting, but New Hampshire DOT reached out. They're going to be doing paving here. It seems like they pave Main Street like every other year. I'm
Yeah.
not quite, that's why it's 4 feet thick, but that's beside the point. But they did reach out because they remembered, which was very good, that there had been the discussion and the what's the word I'm thinking of, the demonstration at this intersection. So they were wondering if sort of this could tie in together. So I think at this point, regional planning has reached out to their on-call engineer to kind of look at it. DOT District 5 has committed to removing the pavement in that area before. So it might just move forward.
Wow,
In a very simple way.
that's great.
They were planning to pay this year, 2025.
Yes, it's going out to bid shortly. And they were going to put out to bid to pave the entire thing. So
Could
this
they do
is,
some of Briar Hill also?
yeah, maybe we could trade. You don't have to do the
Just like move
center
the
of
road
that.
signs at night.
Do Briar Hill. That's a really good idea. So that's happening. And then largely I've spent my time doing budgets and town meeting, and it's that time of year. I would say we've had more requests for information than I've seen in the past.
On the budget,
All sorts of things
Like 91A
So-
requests.
that they technically could be, they've come in and we've provided the information, but substantial amount of information just to note that. I think that's
Is it to a broader population or requests from?
I think more requests, even though it's not very many people.
From people in town though.
Yes. And there's a lot of legislation, which is kind of interesting. So
Lot.
keep your
There's a
eyes
lot.
on it. I've
Yeah,
been reading through some of it.
there were over 1,000 filed.
Whoa.
Well,
Yeah. There are a lot potentially impacting municipalities.
If you're not getting the municipal association update on Fridays, you may want to sign up for that. And you can also sign up for Fast Democracy. through the municipal association, which sends out updates daily on the bills you check. Like I have all the municipal bills, and I do not read them daily because it would take all day. But it's always good to be updated, and it's easy to click on and see the most up-to-date language of the bill and where it's at and when hearings are coming and stuff.
All right. Thank you. So next up, we have public comment. So we have one person with us and a few people online. So if you'd like to speak online, just raise your hand, but we've got Norm here with us. Hi, Norm.
One greatest already, by the way. So I
Okay.
know that all.
Oh,
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Someone Cooper, 121 Amesbury Road. I just want us to say Happy New Year to you guys.
7 years, Tom.
And thank you for all that you guys do. And I wish you guys nothing but the best of 2025.
Thank you. Norm.
Norm.
That's lovely.
the best public comment we've ever received. All
I
right.
expect the same at the budget committee.
Are you ready?
All right, Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi. May I ask a question about the capital improvement plan? I'm not sure if I'm looking at the right thing here. Capital Reserve Maintenance Trust Fund, is that the plan? For
You were
cap-
going in and out a little bit there. Did you say you're looking at the Capital Reserve Maintenance Trust Fund?
Yes, is the plan, the document I'm looking at is Capital Reserve Maintenance Trust Fund. So is that basically the plan?
That's the capital improvement plan.
Oh,
So,
okay.
question?
So my question is about the transfer station in that plan. And I'm noticing that there a line that's pink, not sure why it's a different color than the others, and it's for brush/compost area rehab. I don't know if you guys know any more in detail about that, but there was some discussion earlier about the possibility of doing food scrap composting as well. And it sounded like the staff would be cautiously open to that if there was a solid surface to put it on and the right tires on the vehicles and such. So this rehab plan is $200,000. Do you know if that would be also covering food scrap composting, or is that just brush compost do now?
Think so. So in the original plan, there was $45,000 for just that, creating a new base. That money was pulled out of the capital plan, but money was encumbered from this year's budget. So there is money in there to build that base. So there's $45,000, which will be able to improve that area and put in gravel and make that a solid area.
Okay, so that could also be used for food scrap composting.
I know that was a discussion that I think this moves us in that direction. I'm not sure how far it moves us.
Okay. Oh, I hope for $200,000 it can move us pretty far along.
It was never 200,000 and is not 200,000. It's 45,000
Oh,
for-
I'm just, okay.
for
The
gravel and pavement.
Yeah, the document I'm looking at is dated December 2nd, 2024. And it says $200,000.
Wait, sorry, I needed, what line is it for?
Wait a minute, maybe I'm getting my lines mixed up because it's so small here. Let me. So. So there used to be. a line for recycling, rebuilding the recycling shed?
Yeah, so there still is a line for recycling, building,
Oh.
rebuild, $200,000 appropriated in, currently it's 2031. And I think when Dan was here and we were talking about this, for that specific one, I think we discussed the idea of coming up with more of a universal all-in plan, similar to kind of what happened at George's Park, where we could think about kind of everything holistically moving into the future. Yeah, I don't think that line item isn't something that would be used for composting now.
Yeah, and the 45,000 that Neil was talking about does not show up on this sheet at all.
Right.
It's an encumbrance from the operating budget for 2024.
Right. The original request was in there, but it got moved, but the money is available for 2025.
I believe the main purpose of that was to improve it so that they could drive the tractor back there, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. And it would be large enough for scrap composting, we hope. I mean, you may not know the answers to these. I could talk to
Yeah, we
somebody.
didn't, I don't recall talking about that specifically, but something we could talk about. I
Yeah.
just don't, yeah, I don't think any of us actually know.
I remember, and I might could be a little off, but I remember when Dan was in to present, we had asked about a food scrap program. And we talked about it a little bit, but I don't think there was ever any commitment from Dan or from us to put money in specific for that purpose.
Right, yeah, that's true. I just remembered there was a conversation about, well, what would be required? And there was a discussion of, I think it was $30,000 to put down a concrete slab. And then they would different kind of tires for the loader, possibly a second loader to do food scrap. So that's where I'm coming from that.
My memory, Bonnie, is that the conversation was never really picked back up
Right.
after that exchange, and so that hasn't gone anywhere since then.
Okay. Is that something that would come for the from the select board, or where would that come from if we wanted to see some conversations about it?
I think it would be more conversations with Dan and figuring out how to fund precisely what was needed. And I think the other concern is staffing at the transfer station. And you know, so I don't think we can talk about that without taking into consideration the staffing needs to make that work.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And also what to do with it once we have it sort of set up. And by that, I mean, what to do with the compost.
Okay. So you are suggesting that we just talk with Dan and Jolene, not talk to the select board about it? Because I just think we would like to put word on this somehow, but we're not sure who to talk to and what to talk about.
I don't know precisely the steps, but I just know that the conversation would include Dan and Jolene and the select board. But I don't know what the first step is in the process. But all those people should be involved. That's not very helpful. I'm sorry, Bonnie.
Yeah. Well, I hope we can have that conversation, because it looks like select board no longer supports the waste diversion through unit-based pricing. And we don't do composting, so that means we don't have any waste diversion programs at all.
I mean, just as a suggestion, I mean, maybe wait until after the March elections, because there's going to be two new board members. And so that might be a time to sort of circle back and think about this again.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else online? Okay, all right. Anything for other? Okay. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. So thank you to everyone who joined us tonight online and our one and only attendee in person. And yeah, okay, Stephen, motion to adjourn. I will second that, and there's no roll call.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, see you.